Hello, everybody. Welcome. Good morning, buenos dias. My name is Celia Lacayo, and I am the Assistant Director here at the UCLA Chicano Studies Research Center and help lead the Latina Futures 2050 Lab. I'd like to welcome everyone to our webinar today, which is focusing on community power in the 2024 election. Latina Futures is a collaborative of researchers, scholars, and community partners who work together to enhance opportunities for representation, visibility, and influence across different sectors. We are truly proud and thrilled to have you with us for this important conversation exploring the power of grassroots strategies to drive voter engagement and participation through a Latina lens. As we approach one of the most consequential elections in recent history, it is crucial that we understand how grassroots movements are mobilizing new and formerly disengaged voters. Today's panel will dive into political preferences, priorities challenging and shaping the Latino electorate, while also spotlighting the impactful voter education efforts that are increasing civic engagement in our communities. This discussion is part of our larger series in 2024 election cycle, where we'll be examining the crucial role of voters of color. Our next event will be on December 4th, and we'll focus on the election aftermath with Latina journalists. We'll be sending you an invitation and registration for that. I am so excited for the insights we'll all gain today and hope that they inspire all of us to continue building inclusive, culturally resonant campaigns. So let's get started. I'd like to introduce the moderator for today, Gloria Soto, who is Executive Director of Future Leaders of America, which is one of California's largest Latinx youth serving organizations. Gloria, please take it away.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Celia, and good morning, good afternoon to everybody who has joined us today for this vital conversation on community power in the 2024 election. Again, my name is Gloria Soto, and I am honored to be your moderator. I currently, as was shared, serve as the Executive Director of Future Leaders of America, where our mission is to mobilize youth for long-lasting systemic change through advocacy and leadership development. As we approach one of the most consequential elections in recent history, this discussion couldn't be more timely. We'll explore the grassroots strategies that are effectively mobilizing Latino communities with a special focus on Latinas and the political power they bring to shaping our democracy. Our goal today is to examine these strategies that have successfully driven voter engagement, understand the barriers that still exist, and highlight actionable steps for fostering greater civic participation. I am thrilled to be joined by a distinguished panel of leaders who are on the front lines of this work. Today with us, we have Alejandra Gomez, who is the Executive Director for LUCHA, Genny Castillo, Principal. Castillo, she is the Principal at Estrella South Consulting. We have Gigi Pedraza, Executive Director of the Latino Community Fund in Georgia. We have Yadira Sanchez, Executive Director of Poder Latinx. And these are fabulous panelists for today. Thank you so much for joining us and for being part of this amazing discussion.
Thank you for having us.
Of course. So to get started, I'll go ahead with the first question that really focuses around the current political climate that we are in and some of the priorities that our communities may be most interested in. So as I mentioned, we are truly about to experience one of the most consequential elections in recent history. And so what do you see as the key political priorities and issues that are really driving Latino voters and more specifically Latinas to the polls? And Genny, I'll have you get us started with that question.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. Hello, everybody. Hola todos. So I think a lot of the things are in existence that people just want to be heard, right? It's not crazy to think that people just want equal opportunity to get services that have been promised to them, right? A lot of folks want to be able to say, I want to go to the doctor and I want to be able to not have a bill that's going to put me in bankruptcy. They want to be able to buy homes. They want to be able to actively participate in what is life, right? And so a lot of folks are like, oh my God, Latinas have to be talked to in a different way. But no, you just need to make sure that we're getting candidates that are saying to us that what your dreams are attainable, that we can protect you, and that we shouldn't be worried about opportunities to not have access to things because of our status, right? And so I think a lot of the folks that I've talked to are disenchanted with the process because we have been lied to so much that folks just come to us during election time, and it's very rare that you see active elected officials really trying to get our vote after they've been elected. And I think when we're seeing that time and time again, a lot of people are tired of it, and we're not asking for anything crazy. We're just asking for opportunities to be considered. And why does it have to be so hard that we as Latinas have to be in this idea of this sandwich generation where we're still trying to get our bearings, but we're also protecting our elders? But many of us have children as well, and you have to be the caregiver for both. And so how do we balance all that while trying to challenge that we're not getting paid at the same rate as our counterparts, that we're not getting the same opportunities to be discussed in real contention with everything else that's happening, and folks are kind of just putting us aside? So I think it's a lot of these feelings that a lot of folks are saying, just listen to us, please just ask us what we need, and stop telling us that we should only be worried about one thing, particularly immigration, because it feels like that's all they want us to be worried about, when it's not just one thing. We are multifaceted people, and we care about multiple things at the same time, which is ultimately how do we feel protected and safe in the communities that we've built.
Yes. It's interesting. I was door knocking not this last weekend, and that kept coming up. Like, oh, candidates are only coming to the door when it's election season, but during their time in office, they're completely disconnected. And so, if any of the other panelists want to share, Yadira, Alex, Gigi, like, what are some things that grassroots organizations or community groups who are really focused on like getting out the vote, like what are some things that we can do to ensure that there's a continuous civic engagement happening within our communities, but also like how do we hold our elected officials accountable so that they're not just coming to our door on election year?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in, and I fully agree with what Genny said. I think that the key is that we also want to be able, as a community, as Latinas, we want to be able to evolve from potential opportunities to probable situations, right? And there is a gap between what's possible and what is probable. And we're also tired to be the first community that gets cut when there is a negotiation. And so this piece around accountability is critical for us, right? We do work statewide in Georgia, and continuously the community here has been disregarded, lied to, forgotten. And this is something that we take very seriously. Our community, particularly our women, we are very smart. And politicians and campaigns need to remember that. If not, we're here to remind them. A critical piece is wages. Georgia still has $5.15 as a minimum wage. There are 5 southern states that do not have minimum wage, right? And so in our community in Georgia, 91% of our families, of our households report income, yet 1 in 5, 1 in 6, depending on where you are, people live in poverty in our community. So this shows the great sort of gap that exists between, working, contributing, do the best you can, and the ability to be able to sustain your family, to feed them, to just meet minimum requirements to live. So this is something that I think campaigns, parties, and everyone, funders, nonprofits need to take seriously. We need to care for people first. We don't have to just show up for their votes because we get it. And so for me, this is critical in the work that we do. This should be critical in the commitment that we have as leaders, as organizations to our communities. And we need to be able to push and organize so that people don't forget why and how, and they got in office and who was there for them.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I would love to jump in. Gigi, yes, I agree with everything you say. You too, Jenny. And when we're knocking on the doors, what we're experiencing at LUCHA is that Latinas want belonging. They want to feel a part of the fabric of this country, and they want to be seen, and they want to be heard. And what often happens is the issues that our communities care about the most are often treated as a silo on immigration, and negating the fact that our communities need affordable housing, they need affordable childcare, and we also want equal pay. And so the way that our communities are also relegated is they're going to turn out for us. Because why would they vote for Trump? But the reality is, the question being, what have politicians done for Latinas? Because Latinas are now asking also questions. What have you done for me? I deserve, and I am demanding now. So we have also, as civic engagement organizations, done our homework. We have brought our communities into the political arena, and now our communities are being turned away because now we're asking too many questions. And so the proposition now is that we keep asking questions. And what we're seeing now, LUCHA did a longitudinal study, and we came out with Latinos Rising, its values clusters on how to approach Latino communities. And what we're finding is that more and more, there is this big lie about Latinos that we're defecting to Trump or we're moving Republican. No, the reality is that we are registering unaffiliated because we don't identify with either party because the parties are not delivering for our people. And so then Latinos are calling the question. And so right now, the investment needs to go to Latinas. What is a year-round program that isn't transactional, that doesn't bring us mariachis or doesn't just bring us tacos every 4 years? Porque ya estamos llenos. Yeah, we're done with that, right? We have heartburn from all the tacos every 4 years.
Right.
We want real solutions to our policies.
So true. So true. Danos otra cosa, por lo menos. They don't make any other food but tacos.
Right?
If I could jump in after Alex, first, I like my tacos. Okay, so I'm Mexicana. I love tacos. I can eat tacos every day. but definitely echoing what my colleagues here. First, I want to thank you all for putting this amazing conversation together. It's an honor to be here. It's an honor to be speaking with these amazing poderosas here on that I admire so much on this webinar. And really talking and centering Latinas. We know Latinas are powerful. We know Latinas are jefas of not only our familias, our communities. And I think it's starting to show. The candidates, the political parties, if they haven't paid notice, organizing a Latina means organizing the entire family unit. It means organizing our communities and a lot of leadership roles that they play within key pillars in the community. And as we've been working, Poder Latinx has right now operations in 7 states: Arizona, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, in the valleys of the Yakima Valley, Washington, Central Valley, California, Rio Grande Valley, Texas. We've been canvassing, and we've been seeing definitely the leading issue here is the economy. Almost everyone, whether you're Latina, Latino, all of the above, the economy is the top issue. But when we dig deeper, for us, we've seen as housing is the primary burden you know, every conversation we have, childcare has become inaccessible for many families, working families. And when we think about the abortion bans in some of the states that we operate, it's a huge burden to families when we think about how are they going to survive, how are they going to move forward. And surprisingly, but not really, is abortion. Abortion is a top issue that families care about. And it's very interesting when we have these conversations and you open the doors and there's crosses and a lot of religious, you know, saints and all of that in the family, in the house. As a woman of faith, I think this has opened like a whole new page that we knew was there, but there's always been like that stereotype that Latinos are not progressive, that they're not pro reproductive freedom and rights. And what we've seen is that even the most conservative Latinos, and including Latinas, right, in states like Florida, they're against abortion bans. They're for freedom. They're for the liberty to do your own, to make your own decisions, and to trust Latinas to make those decisions with their doctors and as an individual. So definitely, I think this echoing what Alex have mentioned, you know, Latinas are a political force, and something that we saw after the Harris nominate confirmation as a candidate, we got a surge of Latina registering to vote. It tripled in many of our states, and that's telling us something, especially once we're hearing conversations with some voters that are of Mexican descent, that there was the first Mexicana elected president in Mexico, and maybe the United States is going to follow. And the role that they will play, I think, is a very exciting role. That there's excitement right now that we're seeing, especially among Latinas.
Thank you all for these wonderful comments. I mean, what I keep hearing over and over is that Latinas are not just we're not focused on a single issue. We're multidimensional. And when our basic needs are not met, it makes it so challenging for us to want to be engaged, or to have, in a way, it makes us lose hope in our elected officials, in the voting process to a certain extent. And so, I mean, what I'm also hearing, right, is that there is this misconception that our comunidades are not informed, that they don't understand the issues, when in reality, they are experiencing the hardships on a day in and day out basis. They are on survival mode. I mean, I heard you all talk about housing insecurity, food insecurity, the lack of human care infrastructure in our nation, whether it's childcare, elderly care, you know, and at the end, it's falling on us, you know, to care for our parents, abuelitos, children, and that is challenging. It's almost as if though our heads are barely floating on above water. And so, with that being said, like how do we bring a message of hope to voters? How do we say no? Like, we understand that elected officials at times, you know, continue to disappoint us, or it feels that they only come to us, you know, when it's election time. Like, what are some tactics that us, who, or many of us who may work in communities doing year-round civic engagement work, like what are some tactful things that we could do to keep our communities engaged, to keep elected officials accountable?
So I want to actually push back a little bit, Gloria, because I think we're beyond hope. We've been hoping for too long, right? I think what we need is courage, courageous leaders, courageous candidates that speak and say what needs to be said, act accordingly, right? And follow through after they have been elected. In Georgia, there are many candidates, including federal representatives, that run on specific platforms. And once they get elected, they forget about it, right? And so to me, I am looking for courage. I'm looking for folks that, you know, at the federal level and at the state level are able to make decisions and share proposals and organize folks and invest, that can fix that can remove some of the barriers, the challenges that we find, right? It's not okay. Georgia has a ban on attending the top 3 public higher institutions, higher education institutions, right, for partially documented and documented folks, including lawfully present, right? If you are DACA, you cannot go to UGA, which are the same type of organizations that used to ban African-American Black children, right? It is not okay and enough for me when a candidate says, oh, pray, or, well, that's a state issue. When the South has consistently shown and historically shown that, we are not a welcoming community. The establishment does not really like us. They are actively trying to put barriers. And so sometimes we need candidates at the federal level that are going to override the states because they know the states are not going to do the right thing. So that's to me important, right? Access to healthcare, access to safety net programs, housing, like my colleagues were saying. So, for me, it goes beyond that hope. We've been hoping, we'll continue to hope, right? Latinas organize, we are there for each other, and we'll be there and have been there forever. It's not about us, we're doing our part. We need someone to match us. And that's what we're looking for, I think.
And so my follow-up question would be like, well, then how do we hold those elected officials who are already in power or who will be going into power after November 5th? How do we hold them accountable so that so one, they keep their promises, and 2, they meet the needs of our community? Because when I think about voter engagement, I'm not thinking about just like, oh, the months between August and November. It's year round, even during off election cycles. And part of that work is continuous engagement with the elected officials, and also in a way identifying potentially, other folks who may be interested in running. And so how do we build a bench of Latinas, of people from community who understand the needs of our community, who do have the courage to do something about it? Like what's the next step forward?
I would jump in to say, to Gigi's point, it is about courage, but about people who actively talk the talk and walk the walk. Because I think one thing is that people don't understand once you get elected, the politics that exist in the position, right? There's a lot of old people, and we love old people because only certain people get to be old. I always want to make sure to say that. Wisdom is important and experience is important. But what happens with experience and wisdom? You tend to be complacent. And so when you're complacent in this space, the person coming in has to be knowledgeable that it's not going to be easy and it doesn't move fast. So I think when we're talking to people about this, it shouldn't be like, oh, you just vote and it's fine. It's not just vote and be fine. It's vote, volunteer, get involved, go to the Capitol, see what they're doing, call them, make sure you're bringing people to go see them. These are the people that we hired. And I think there are too many barriers that we don't talk about. It's not easy just to go to the Capitol, y'all. It's not easy to roll up to your state capitol. It could be 4 to 6 hours away from where you live. Once you get there, then you have to pay to park. Don't get me started about paying to park. I don't understand the reasoning behind it. Then you have to have an ID to get into the space. How many people can do that on a Tuesday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, let alone 10 a.m.? So I think being realistic about how this process works afterward is what gives people more hope, because they have hope in understanding. They have hope in actively learning the process and really making sure that we have folks who are going to be willing to understand that once you get in these positions, it's really scary for women. And that's another part. We can't just be like, I know vamos juntas, it'll be fine to run for office. No, we get more death threats. We get more people who say they want to see us get hurt before they want to hear our opinion. So I think when we're honest and very courageous about speaking those truths to power, then we can show them these are realistic things that happen. It can take up to 4 years for a bill to be passed. It can take up up to 6 years for somebody to be nominated and to get the money enough to finally win. Some people have been running for 9 years. Son viejitos by the time they get up there because it's been so long. But once they get there, they should have a staff that's knowledgeable. They should have training opportunities for their staffers to understand you need to talk to the community, and the community needs to understand their power. If we clog up the lines of these elected officials, they're going to do some action because they need to have those lines open. If we show up where they're only taking pictures, we need to call them out. Why are you taking pictures and not signing bills, sir? Why are you not actively putting people in your community to work in these spaces, ma'am? And really making sure that we're calling them out every chance we get, because too many people, again, live in that complacency of like, yo no quiero decir nada. No, 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 no. It's okay. I don't want to run. No, run, burn it down. Let people know that we are serious about this because we need to be. And that's it. I move on.
Fire, love all of that. What I would add to this also is that we're not waiting for politicians. We're actually organizing year round. And so we have been in relationship as LUCHA for the past 15 years with not just voters, with our Latino community, because well, if you can vote and if you can't vote, you still have political power and you still have political agency. And the thing that I would say is the homework for organizations like ours and advocacy groups across the board is how do we create on-ramps so that community that isn't politicized can actually be curious, feel safe, and join a movement. Because the reality is that we need to be able to advocate, to fight back against terrible policies in any conditions. And the way that that happens is by building a culture of co-governance and participation. And that has to be the diligent work, to Jenny's point about this isn't a 4-year thing, this isn't a 2-year thing. This is a generational body of work. Because what we're doing is also dismantling this notion that one election is going to fix everything, that one politician is going to solve the problem. The reality is that we are the political agents of change that we need in this moment, because we know what is happening in our communities. And when La Señora Maribel from our team that has been with us for the past 8 years going, and now she feels powerful enough because she's won speed bump campaigns, she's won a minimum wage campaign, she's won $225 million into the Housing Trust Fund. She feels powerful enough to go tell the government he pays family medical leave, right? Like that is the leadership that we also need to build outside of the political arena. So it's not just candidates that are running for office, but our gente are the ones that are going and reminding even our gente that sometimes forget, our politicians will forget that they're a gente and that they were also, you know, suffering with bad wages and maybe not affordable childcare, that they need to stick to the promises and they need to keep them for our people.
Yeah, if I could chime in here as well, definitely agree with everything. Holding our folks accountable after election is so important. And I always give folks the example of going to the doctor. You can go to the doctor once a year, but if you don't live a healthy lifestyle, don't expect to live long, be healthy, you know, free of any medical conditions. Of course, there are things that you have to change and you know, be involved and follow the doctor's orders in order to live a long, healthy life. And the same thing with our democracy. Voting is just one thing, but there's so many other things you could do to participate in our democracy that my colleagues already have shared, including running for office, including holding them accountable, joining a committee, joining a campaign, joining one of our organizations year round, because we don't only work and talk to voters for like every 4 years, every 2 years. Every year, all of us will be next year registering people. All of us will be door knocking to get out the vote, because there will be an election next year as well in many of the states across the country, electing local positions or state positions. I would also mention bringing it back to the importance of this moment. And maybe when we talk to voters and sometimes they don't feel excited, there's like that apathy of like not voting. We remind them Our country has not seen our political muscle flex yet. We are 36.2 million eligible voters. It's projected 17 million will cast their ballot this year. 17 million out of 36.2, that's less than half. So when this whole narrative that Latinos are moving to the right or like we're losing men or whatever, we have not seen our full potential, because if everyone voted in all of the states, we will completely transform who's in office, and then we won't be ignored. The part of the reasons why these elected officials think they can go and get elected, use our community to get elected, and then don't respond is because they see us as not frequent voters, and we need to change that. We need to build political consciousness so our community knows that they have to vote. They might not like the candidates. It's like we might not like paying taxes, but we have to do it. we have, we have that civic duty that we have to build, that political duty that we have to build. So every year, they elected officials know they cannot ignore us, because if they ignore us, they will be out of a job next year. And we have those numbers in many of the states. We could elect already leaders, champions in our community. I'm sure Alex, well, I know might be still a little bit a soft issue here, a delicate issue, but there was a big election in Arizona that was lost by 39 votes. 39 votes. That's like, that hurts everyone's heart, because everyone thinks that's my familia right there. I hope every single one of them went out to vote, because they could have elected champions into positions of power. So that would be my only 2 cents. The year-round community engagement, joining a campaign. We do a lot of culturally tailored, and I believe all of my colleagues here too, we talk to the community in the way they want to be talked to. We have a lot of Spanish monolingual community members that they cannot be left out of the conversation because they don't speak English. We tailor almost everything we do is bilingual. Actually, we provide that information in both English and Spanish. We work very closely with our Spanish media partners to make sure the information gets disseminated, because we often don't get the same information in Spanish media that we do in English media. And it's very important that our community, our Spanish monolingual voters, get that same information. So I would say that if year-round engagement, using multiple partners on the ground, pillars in the community, faith-based organization, labor unions, they have membership. Other nonprofits already have bases, like LUCHA, that's been around for many, many years, to effectively engage year-round our community, because they know when it's transactional. They know when it's like, you're coming in just to get our vote. Bye, I won't see you in 4 years. And they know Poder Latinx and our organizations here are going to be there next year to pick up the fight where we left off, and continue driving change forward.
Thank you, Yadira. And I mean, when you mentioned the loss by just under 40 votes, I mean, that just comes to show that every vote matters. Every vote counts. So pivoting a little bit, let's talk about our jóvenes, our young people. What role do you see our young voters, our jóvenes, our juventud, playing in this election cycle? And what are some things that you find really exciting about young people getting involved?
I try to still think that I'm young, because I certainly tell everybody I'm 24. But, I guess I'm a little older than that. But I think one of the incredible parts about the young people is that if they want to, they can do it, and they can move a lot of mountains. I think one of the things I would say to the young people who are listening, do it regardless of what people say. We are working in a space that folks are traumatized. There is too much going on all the time. They have been in situations that look like nothing like our childhood, that look nothing like our youthhood, that it is so vastly different. And I think when we tell people that they can't do it, it motivates them more to do it. So I would say, make sure that we are actively engaging them. Don't just tell them no. But I will say to the young folks, organize properly. A lot of y'all don't know how to use Excel, and it's really getting to me because you can do so many great things if you just put pen to paper. Make sure that you're making the phone calls, make sure that you're organizing, make sure you're jumping on the Zoom. Get on your Zoom, y'all. Make sure that you are as organized as possible, because the young vote is vitally important. Because of them calling it out, we got a new candidate, y'all. Like, that is power, that is effectiveness. That was them literally saying, we're not going to get engaged. They were not happy up into July. And then when July came, they were like, wait a minute, we can actually see something different. So don't try to try to put down their fire. We've got to let young people really, as they say, let them cook, so that we can go ahead and see them prepare something great. And I'm really excited for my elderness, so that when I see these young people in play, that they're going to actively consider everybody in their conversation and not just the immediate people around them.
I want to say that, like, I had the incredible honor to have worked for United We Dream for a couple of years, and just to see how powerful young people are, and really because of undocumented youth, we now have DACA.
That's
right?
right.
And so when we unleash young people, I don't think I knew about this let them cook language, but so, like, when we let them cook, I'm gonna use it now.
Don't worry, I'm a youth translator when I want to be. Don't worry, I interpret what the, it's because, you know, I'm 24.
I love it. Yeah, I'm gonna say this now. But it is true, right? It's like, it's that bold courage, it's that impatience, and delivering for the now. And so being able to not only, like, be in voice and be in practice, but we also need to build the culture still of voting, because what's happening is the MAGA people are doing all of that, plus knocking doors, plus owning the media, and still voting. So we need to operate in every single arena of the political sphere, as well as being discontent, and being out there and advocating, but still also voting.
I can jump in here. I'm like Genny. I'm young at heart, but I'm also a millennial, and I'm definitely not youth, right? I could be youngish, but not youth. And it's very important, like, as we're talking about youth, especially Latinx youth, like, they need to be in positions of power. We need to give young people the driving wheel and let them drive. And something that we have seen Gen Zers that's different. They're unapologetic. They're not scared. They're bold. They take action. And echoing what Alex said, like, they want it and they want it now, which is different than other generations. They also grew up with the internet, so they're, you know, digital natives. They can do things on social media that I can't. I always ask for help. But when we think of our electorate, the Latino electorate is the youngest electorate from all the electorates. The young people in our community can make a significant impact in so many of our states that we can't forget. And right now, actually, just yesterday, we released a poll that we did on youth of color, and focusing on the Latino community specifically. We are seeing it overwhelmingly support in a lot of battleground states for Harris over Trump. And this was in Latinas or Latinos. This was just Latinx youth in comparison with the overall Latino demographic, which was huge. And then also we saw 81% of Latino Latinx youth care about the economy, care about healthcare, and particularly abortion. That's one of their top issues. So, I mean, Latinx youth, if we get Latino youth out, it will transform also our electorate, because we're the youngest, because close to almost 50% of our electorate is millennials and Gen Zers, which is very different than other electorates. So we get youth out, we'll transform our country.
Yeah, I just want to add, I agree with everything that my colleagues here have said. I do want to share one thing that concerns us and that we are focused on right in our campaign this year, which is the majority of our campaign is, we're reaching everyone. We're focused on voters under 35 in particular. And that is that digital natives, like the younger folks, right, have a really hard time discerning between knowledge and information. And so the role of disinformation, misinformation, it's really critical to recognize and to address. Because, when you're my age, when you're in your 40s, you were used to going to, the libraries, you had the books that you knew you had to read, you knew what was knowledge, and you knew what somebody else was saying, what somebody else said. Right now, it's really hard to discern for folks that have not gone through all of that process. So that is something that may hinder or, make even more complicated our ability and to resource the generation. And so folks are smart because I think that particularly younger folks have lived what it is not to have a political voice because their parents couldn't vote, but they have lived what it is to be affected by policies, right? That they couldn't repeal because they did not have the right to vote, but now they can. And so how to harness that power and at the same time, facilitate ways in which they can make informed decisions, recognizing what is real and what is not, is going to be really critical.
Gigi, you bring up a great point about, Genny, were you going to add something?
I was just going to add to Gigi's point, like that is definitely a concern across generations, right? Because we are even seeing candidates actively sharing misinformation. Like the candidate who's running for office is sharing crap on the internet. So I think it's super important that we call it out and that we help protect all the generations, especially with our older generation on WhatsApp. Sabes, like WhatsApp is critically important to our communities, especially because that's the way they communicate with folks back home, right? And so a lot of folks are like, yo oíste, and they're sharing it without having that background. So I do want to just double down on that because too many people are sharing things not knowing exactly what they're sharing.
Right. The misinformation is quite frankly frightening. And so my next question would be, on that same topic, like how do we make sure that voters are informed and that they how do we make sure that they have the accurate information in front of them? How do we with social media out there, there's a lot of misinformation circulating, as you said, Genny, even from the candidates themselves. So how do we make sure that folks are well informed on the issues that are directly going to impact them or are impacting them?
I would say be mindful with what you share as an individual. Like me individually, I share stuff from our Secretary of State's website for the state of Georgia to make sure that that's the information folks are getting. If I'm going to share an article, I want to make sure it's from a trusted news source that I can go back and actually read the article as well and link that. I wouldn't share anything without a link too. Like, can folks go back to it? Because a lot of times when you share just a post on Instagram or on TikTok or cualquier other social media, if that thing gets deleted, then the post is gone completely. So you want to make sure that you can read it back to something that's going to be long standing. That's how I would be mindful about what you're sharing. And if it's on WhatsApp, y'all, if they have some glitter on that background, don't share it. Stop your mama when she send it to you. Go ahead, mami, ya está bien. Your tias, you gotta go ahead and nip it in the bud. If you see it, make sure you stop it so that they don't share it, because it is way too easy to share. And then when we're trying to share other things, people don't share that. So like, please be mindful. Utilize your Secretary of State's website. I'm going to be very clear with that. Utilize C3 information, so that, and that's 501c3 for folks who aren't familiar with that. That is the IRS status for charities and nonprofits that are nonpartisan, tend to rely with more information based things that you can share, so you're not necessarily traveling on that partisan side, so that you're getting the most unbiased information that you can. So that would be my suggestions.
I love all that. And then one piece on the survey and poll that we did in Arizona specifically. So this is Arizona Latinos. It was a survey that had conversations and focus groups with Latinos, newly naturalized all the way to fourth generation. And it was a survey that was conducted with 1,400 Latinos and Latinas in Arizona. And what we found is that NPR is one of the first trusted news sources for Latinos in Arizona, and also AM radio, trusted outlets. But what we have also done through LUCHA is we've created a WhatsApp group. And so we started it during the debates to do a fact checking. But now, because we've created a community through the WhatsApp groups, people will post something and try to see if this is actually like a piece of disinformation. And so we'll fact check it to ensure that, is this accurate? Is this not? Is this more disinformation? So that folks have also coming back to the organizations to, as their trusted source as well, have a vehicle to be able to understand what's real and what isn't.
Yeah, definitely echo the fact checking, using reliable media outlets, not someone who created their own channel and has a look alike a newsroom, but it's not really. We always tell folks to go back to a reliable source that is fact checking information. There's a lot of information now that media, once speeches are made, they fact check them after that. That information is so important for us to reshare because it has been fact checked by a media outlet, a credible source. I would also say, just plugging in here, that we've been very, very worried about the mis and disinformation, specifically targeting our community. Latinos are targeted at a much higher rate than other folks. In a way, our solution has been in Project 2025, because a lot of folks say certain things, but again, they're supporting this agenda that's extremely harmful to the Latino community. So we're part of the Defendiendo Nuestro Futuro coalition, Latinos Against Project 2025, that is focused on fighting this disinformation, misinformation, with actual factual information that is clearly in black and white in this 900 pages that is covers a variety of issues, all that we can think of, from Latinos to the LGBTQ community, plus Latinas, like reproductive rights, the environment, everything is in there. And what we're doing is, like, we want the truth, and we want the truth from these elected officials, these candidates that are hoping to be our representatives. So for us is also asking them to take a clear stance. Are you for Project 2025? Are you not? Because I need the dis and misinformation to stop, and I want, like, the truth, and we deserve the truth. So I would encourage all of us to go to the Defendiendo Nuestro Futuro. There's a lot of resources there you can pull that are bilingual, that are directly coming from their agenda, and making those hard decisions. Asking, if you're participating in town halls, if you're joining a webinar with a candidate, ask them, are you in favor of Project 2025? Is this going to be your agenda? Because we need to know.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I agree with everything. And we also need to do that, I think, at the state level. So we were able to work with Galeo, one of our member organizations, and the Latinos for Democracy Coalition, which we ran to develop a tool where it doesn't matter in what county you are, any of the 159 counties in Georgia. In Spanish, English, or Portuguese, you put your address and you get how your ballot looks. You also get the candidates, what they stand on, 4 or 5 particular questions that are critical to our community, statewide or federal, who funds them, and what decision-making power they have. How does that affect them? And we do that every year, and we need to continue doing that every year, because this is the long game, right? It's, there was a comment on the chat around AI. This is only going to get worse. And AI is an aggregator. So the more information that it's out there, right, digitally, AI just aggregates. It's not necessarily reflective of the reality. It's just an aggregator. It can aggregate lies, and people think it's real, when they look things up. So I just wanted to mention that. And then the other piece that it's not necessarily easy to do, but I think it's critically important, is that we need to continue talking to folks that may not think like us, right? Like we are all influential to our networks. So, you know, if Yadira or Alex or Jenny have a friend that maybe it's on the fence and don't know, they have a much better chance to be heard too than if I show up and I say something, right? Like in the news or Univision. So we need to continue to talk to people so they understand that there are there's people that think otherwise, that understand otherwise, and there is additional information. That's the only way, I think, to break bubbles. I personally get newsletters from libertarian think tanks, from conservative think tanks, and they are so interesting and insightful for us to understand different ways that people think. Issues can be solved and addressed. And then I think we're much better prepared to talk to communities, because our community is diverse in lots of ways. And so I think it's important that everyone turns out so that both parties can listen to us, and eventually their platforms can be more reflective of our issues.
Thank you for sharing and for the amazing work that you all are doing on the ground, ensuring that voters are educated, that are informed, that our voters and communities are informed on the issues, and that we stop this misinformation that's just spreading. It feels like wildfire. Some of you alluded a little bit to, you know, Project 25, Project 2025, there was talk about that. And I think to some extent, right, we really, in order to be successful this upcoming election and prevent Project 2025 from happening, it's really looking at how we can ensure that voter suppression doesn't continue to happen. And I know that that many states are purging voter rolls and have been doing it for years. And so what are some things that grassroots organizations have been doing to combat this? And how can we prevent it from continuing?
I can start. We don't like doing this, but it seems like it's a trend every election, year, which is every other year, primarily midterms and presidential. We work really hard at a larger scale to build the electorate, just for an off election year, the opposition to work on dismantling and reducing those numbers. And they do that by purging. So a lot of the times, I know our organization, Poder Latinx, and many others have to sue. We enter into lawsuits to make sure that our community doesn't get taken out of the voter rolls, and they have to go through hoops and hurdles to get back on there. We also have noticed this year, thanks to voter registration efforts, this is why they're so important and critical year round, because sometimes people don't know they've been purged. 80% of the folks we have registered in Texas they thought they were registered already, and they haven't. So we are urging everyone to check the registration. So they can, if they've been purged incorrectly, they can go to the Office of Elections and try to get that remedied of why they were taken out. And then, of course, there's always opportunity to sue. And like I said, that suing is not like a fun thing we do, but it's often a necessary. If you've been purged, you always have the option to sue, because it's your right, it's your democratic right. I would also say that there are a lot of hotlines like Ve y Vota, that is going to be available for bilingual folks who have questions about polling locations, and not only purging, right? If you get turned away at the polling location, often says, oh, you're not allowed to vote, call them so they can help and assist you. I'll drop the hotline, or someone can drop the hotline, Ve y Vota, there. And we always have voter guides. Use our websites also as reference. Gigi mentioned some of the resources they have for Georgia. We also have tools on our website. I'll drop the website link on the chat, where you can check if you're registered. You can check where it's your closest polling location. If you need assistance, there's hotlines as well that we are part of a lot of coalitions in different states that also have a voting rights, voter protection coalition, really focus on making sure your voice is heard November 5th.
Yeah, I'd love to piggyback off of what you just said, Yadi. LUCHA had to sue this year because Republicans tried to remove 40,000 naturalized Latino citizens from the voter rolls. And so luckily we were able to stop that. But now our folks still do have to provide proof of citizenship. The other piece that we focus on also during elections is making sure that we are electing officials at the counties and also within the election departments that are value aligned, that care about all voters and aren't going to stop our voters from being able to participate through systemic oppression within their administrative procedures. And one of the other pieces is ensuring that we have volunteers ready for voter protection work. So making sure that we have teams that are ready to deploy, that are monitoring polling locations to ensure that there aren't MAGA people there intimidating our communities. And if there are, having a team that is ready to deploy the security and de-escalation. The other piece is having volunteers that are also ready for ballot curing. So if there are where we were unable to determine the verification of a signature, having volunteers that are helping the administrative offices of the election officials actually call to verify, to make sure that our communities don't get disenfranchised over administrative processes and errors. And then lastly, the biggest piece that we're seeing and that we're very concerned about in coalition with others, Cochise County in Arizona, these are the rural communities. In the elections departments, they are making choices whether they certify the election or not. And so having teams and volunteers ready to go into those offices and disrupt the procedures is monumental, and having lawyers that are ready to help us sue and deploy in that moment so that it is a united and clear effort against the decertification of our elections has been incredibly important, and especially in this very consequential election where we're hearing a lot of that, not only in Arizona, but in other battleground states like Georgia and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania.
Wow, that's amazing.
Definitely want to echo like the importance of bilingual poll monitors. Just think of our folks, first-time voters, folks that don't might not be fluent in English. It's so important. Like and there's still time to volunteer, to join our volunteer program. In many of the states, we're actively looking for bilingual poll monitors. And also voter guides. I'm sure, like I mentioned, I'll also drop some other links on the chat where you can get more information, because casting an informed vote is going to make all the difference in the world. We're pushing, of course, encouraging, empowering our folks to go out and vote, but we need them to be informed and to have some familiarity of like the candidates, because it's a big difference. We're talking of day and night.
Yes, yes, yes. Wow. Well, thank you for sharing some of the great work that you all are doing when it comes to this very important issue, and in ensuring that every vote is counted and that they don't sabotage the steps that have been taken by many of our communities to cast their vote, because it's already challenging enough in many of our states. So I'm looking at the time. We're getting near the finish line, and so I was wondering if we could spend some time talking about some success stories. Do you have some success stories that you would like to share where grassroots efforts significantly boosted Latino voter turnout and what that led to?
I can talk about some fun stories. So in 2018, I was working for House Minority Leader Stacey Abrams' gubernatorial campaign and was the Latinx outreach director and was able to create for the first time ever a Latinx focus tour that I called Vamos Georgia. And we went to 5 different spaces in Georgia to help support our Latinx outreach and get them excited about voting in the campaign. That same year, I'm a dancer. I dance bachata and salsa on 2. Not many people do it, so when you hear it, get excited. So I actually would go to the dance socials and would bring my volunteer sheet. And if someone asked me to dance, I was like, yes, if you sign up for a shift, and they would sign up. And then after the election, I was approached by one of the dancers, and she was like, Genny, because of you, I voted for the first time. And to me, that is such the biggest success I can hear because I literally was actively getting folks to understand this where I was in the time spaces that I was, traveling to the area, going to the dance club, not being shy to discuss it, not being afraid to say out loud that I was voting. And so the fact that they were able to not only vote themselves for the first time, they actually got their family to vote for the first time. And so it's vitally important to understand that when we meet people where they are and we don't try to act like it's completely a very like unnecessary thing to be talking about these things to people, it makes it real, right? Like I don't try to BS people. Everything sucks all the time. Life is hard. We do not have money. We are not being healthy. Our people are getting older. We don't have the support. But when they see us actively showing that we can change that, folks are like, well, dang, maybe it is possible, which is better than hope. And so I think it's so invaluable to me in the work that I do to actually be with people and call it out, but also get engaged with them and be like, you know what? Maybe it doesn't work to just knock on someone's door 2 times. Maybe it works that we have an outdoor festival where we can talk about it. But you know what doesn't work? It doesn't work to just be like, oh, I'm going to bring an elected official that these unengaged people have never heard of and have that person talk to them in a language that they don't understand. My people, we got to stop doing this. If we want people to stay engaged and we want to seek success, we got to get folks to talk to people in the language that they understand. And that's not to say someone who just speaks Spanish, because a lot of our young folks are not bilingual. Some of them only speak English. But do they like to hear Karol G? Do they like to hear Bad Bunny? Do they like Christian Odal? These are the folks and the voices that help us to get folks engaged, and not somebody who they've never heard of that they're like, what does that matter? So all that to say, the success is there when you meet people where they are and you make it better for them to just be a part of this instead of it being foreign to them.
Yeah, where are you gonna go?
Yeah, I thought you were gonna go, but I can jump in here. Definitely for us, like we in 2020 we launched our. I'll bring it back to people, because developing leadership, it for me in my eyes is a great success. Going beyond any election, when we build leadership, that is power. That's people power that no election can take away. So we're very proud in 2020 to have launched our Poderosa Fellowship Program. We're on cohort 4, and this fellowship program is really built for to develop the next Latina civic leadership pipeline. Many of us got here by luck, by chance. One thing led to another. It was never, at least for me and for the Latinas in my organization, we knew what we were going to do, and we were going to do civic work, and that's what we were, going to school for or working up the ladder to get. But this fellowship is very intentional of building that leadership, providing them with the tools, the resources. We're on our 4th cohort. Very proud to say right now our Poderosa leading the charge in Georgia, she comes from the fellowship. Our Poderosa leading our data comes from the fellowship. We have Poderosas working in our comms and development and operations, and they have also found homes in other great organizations like the ones we see here and across our progressive movement. So again, that's for me a success story. And bringing it back also to Arizona, our wonderful team there is really led by young people. Our Canvas team manager, Eric, he's 24. He just turned 24. He's leading our largest operation from any of our states. And that just shows that when you give young people opportunity to learn and grow, they surprise you. And they're, so much further ahead than we even imagined. So I would just wanted to share those stories, as when we invest in people, and elections is one of those times where we're going to harness their leadership, their potential. And then hopefully next year we have a whole new slate of organizers that are going to be engaging our community year round.
Earlier I shared about Maribel, who is a longtime member of LUCHA, who went to the governor's office and she led a delegation. And through that delegation, her demand was dollars into the Housing Trust Fund. And so she was able to move $250 million into the Housing Trust Fund, which is incredible. And that's a work that we do year round. And so we have been focusing through that work of building up community leaders on what we're calling the roadmap to 2025 and beyond. Arizona, si Dios quiere, will potentially flip the legislature and we will have a now opportunity to actually govern at a local level. And our team has been hard at work in preparation for that. And as we're doing that, we're also holding down the election. So and I remember the story of being in relationship and having joy integrated into the fabric of it. So we do parades every year. This year we did concerts. But as we were doing a parade down one of the historically Latino neighborhoods, a señora came out with her mother who turned 100 that day that we were having the parade, and she had never voted because she was, one, asked for a literacy test, and two, she was asked for her citizenship. And she was born in Arizona, she was a citizen in Arizona, but she did not feel comfortable or like she belonged in the state, and so she never voted until that day. And so she registered to vote. She participated in that election, and that election was the year that we ousted Trump. So it was an incredible, an incredible experience, an incredible memory. But that's what we continue to do, is bring democracy to people's doors.
I would share two quick, one story and one fact. And one is that I think last year, for the first time, we reached over 50 local polling locations for our Elections Protection Coalition. And we support that early voting, the weekends, and then on the day of the election, providing support for voters, that they need it, regardless if it's language or some type of disability. And around 80% of the folks working in election protections are not citizens. So they are volunteering because they want to be part of democracy, and that's the way that they engage. Many of them undocumented, underdocumented, folks trying to adjust their status. And it's so incredible to see the power of everyone coming together to be able to participate. So that's always like my favorite part. It's hard work, but it's so motivational and inspiring to see folks, giving themselves and their time. So that's one. And then the other thing, it's the other story. I shared this story yesterday, and so it was top of mind. In the 2020 election, we have one of our members is a group that it's all undocumented organizers in Northeast Georgia, and they had historically not wanted to participate in elections because, they couldn't vote. They didn't feel it was for them, Nobody has ever done anything for them. But for the first time, they said, actually, we need to be out there. And so we granted a small amount of money, and they bought from local entrepreneurs, atole, coffee, tamales, and they stood up 3 of the busiest intersections in their city. And every time there was a red light, they would come to the car and say, I am documented, I cannot vote, but if there's an election, when you do, please think of me, because your vote's gonna matter. And that was such a beautiful story and so important that eventually led for that city, right, to pass proclamations, to fully engage them into governance. And it did not take like a huge amount of money. It did take cultivation and understanding and the political education that's required for folks to be able to make those decisions. But it's one of my favorite success stories.
Thank you all for sharing those amazing stories of success. And, you know, it's definitely, it's not only motivational, but it's like inspiring, and it's like, okay, vamos, let's get this done. November is like 2 weeks away. Let's make sure we get out the vote. So thank you so much for sharing these amazing stories. Now we're going to move on to audience questions. So everybody who's watching us, thank you so much for tuning in and for joining us in this very fruitful discussion, conversation. And so now we get to get the panelists will answer some of the questions that you had on the chat. So the first one that I see here is, how do we continue to engage Latina voters even if they are not progressive? So many are feeling pushed out of their community. How do we create a sense of belonging with candidates that do care about our community? So that's like 2 questions. So if anybody would like to. Sorry.
Yeah. The experiment of democracy, it needs to be able to include all of us, even people that have questions, communities that often have 2 to 3 jobs, that don't have access to information, or don't, just quite frankly, don't have time. And so being able to bring democracy to people's doors means being able to have like real-time conversations. What are the spaces that we're also inviting our communities in to be able to start to have more of a cultural conversation? Who are you? What is what is the issue that really resonates with you? What are the experiences that you're having that are making it difficult to just live? And starting from that place, because then understanding people's sense of pain is where we're going to be able to invite them in to get engaged and take on those places of pain to build power, so that we're actually engaging people from their self-interest versus trying to mobilize people into an issue that might not be core to them. The experiment of democracy might be too big of a question to go and have a conversation with somebody at the door. But if you ask them, what is your issue? Somebody might tell you housing, somebody might tell you immigration, and then being able to have that as a starting place. And then the rest is that relationship, that follow-up. Organizing, what we say in organizing is follow-up is key. So inviting our communities to come to the cafecito, to come to the house meeting, to come to the pachanga, right? Those are all places where people begin to identify their own political analysis to find a political home.
And I would challenge to just ask, what do you define as the difference, right? Because it says, like, what if they're not progressive, but what so what are you? Like, what are we talking about? What do you believe progressive is, and how does that disalign? Because I will say, frankly, I can't have every conversation with every person who does not believe that people are deserving of life, right? I cannot have conversations with folks who are saying that it's too progressive to believe that there should be free lunch for students. So like, we have to be very clear as to how we're defining these things and why is there a difference, right? Because the existence of somebody should not be such a radical idea when we're asking for healthcare, food, housing, protection, life. And so I think it's very clear that when we're saying that you have to be courageous to run, we should also be courageous courageous in the way that we discuss things within our circles and not be shy to call out when somebody is trying to relate their experience to that of a millionaire that we possibly will never be, right? Because when you start talking about conservatism or progressivism, is because we're talking about the actual income. Mi amores, we're not rich, okay? Aunque I can buy everything that I want, because when I see it, I want it, I buy it. That does not mean I'm rich. Okay. When we talk about the rich, we're talking about people that we can never get close to. And I was in a conversation last week about the Black wealth gaps. And the phrase that was said was that we are closer to the unhoused than we are to the millionaires that we tend to try to protect, right? It could be us being laid off of one job that can change
Right.
the complete course of our lives and our generations. Then we will become closer to being Elon Musk. It's not going to happen. And I think too many times people try to defend the Elon Musk of the world and try to condemn the folks that are just trying to live to the next day. And so when we are talking about this, I also want to be very clear that I need to know what you define first before I can have real conversations about what our future looks like.
Oh, I love what Jenny with the G said, because I fully agree with that. And right, like I think that the problem is this labeling, because to me, it's human rights, it's civil rights. We're not asking for anything else. We're asking for opportunities. That's it. And I think we also need to push back, right, on asking why. If someone says, "Oh, I don't think that X category of people should have access to this," why is it wrong that people have access to healthcare? Why is it not okay with you that someone loves someone else? Right? Why is it okay that someone does not have access to healthcare that they needed? Why is it okay with you? Because oftentimes, people are busy. They don't reflect on things that they hear. Sound bites go in and, stay there. People influence each other. So pushing back and saying, why is it okay with you that someone does not get the respect, the opportunities that you do have? Would you like that for yourself? And I assure you that most people will say no, and they'll be forced to reflect. And then the other piece is that I think one of my colleagues shared before, we don't live one issue lives. So if you are against abortion, that's fine. Don't have an abortion. But who are you to tell somebody else that, may be in a different situation, may have a different way of thinking, may have a different need? That's fine. Don't have it. And also, would you like access to healthcare? Also, would you like, affordable and quality K-12 education for your children? Would you like to be respected? Would you like to have protections from deportation, right? Give them the full scope of what they are deciding not to, because they are focused on one issue. I think it's very important.
Absolutely.
I don't have much more to add. It's been said. I would just say that don't give up on them, especially if they're family members, relatives, friends, loved ones. It has taken me a while to have these conversations with a lot of loved ones. I had to spend almost 2 hours with my dad. Right now, there's like a big disinformation campaign pinning immigrants against each other, the ones that have been here for decades versus the ones the crisis at the border with a humanitarian crisis. Folks don't know the difference when it comes to humanitarian law with immigration law, and there's a huge disinformation pinning us against each other, and going in exactly what Gigi said is like, how is this impacting you? When you're retired, what are the things that you care about? I would imagine is Social Security, Medicare expansion, all of the above. So having these real conversations and just finding out why they think the way they think, because a lot of the time it's just they just don't have the information. They live busy lives, and unfortunately the disinformation campaigns are targeting them, so they're getting the information from not reliable resources. That's why sometimes there's a big disconnect. But once you kind of peel the onion back and start seeing the layers, you see that they would be aligned. They care talk to them about the issues they care about the most and bring them closer. It might not be all in one conversation. It might take a little bit of time, but they do take it in and they do internalize that. And that's something I have noticed with a lot of folks. Even when you argue with them, they internalize it. And later they start digesting that information when they start having conversations with other folks that used to think like them. So it's knowledge is a powerful tool.
Yes, thank you. The next question, which I think that was answered to, it was answered to a certain extent during our panel discussion, is Latinas face unique challenges when it comes to voter access and representation. Can you talk about some of those challenges and how grassroots movements are addressing issues such as voter suppression, language barriers, or lack of accessible resources? We talked a lot about this during the panel, but I don't know if there are key things that you want to like re-emphasize or highlight for us again.
I would just echo that I think folks need to utilize early voting. If you have that in your state, I don't know how many states are represented on the call now, but early voting is critically helpful for our busy lives. And I think that's how we should describe it, not as a do it before the lines are too long, but do it because your schedule is busy, y'all. If we're gonna perrear, we need to votar. You know what I mean? Like we could do it all. And so I think it's really being mindful that being able to vote early allows for our schedules, allows for us to go with friends. So like today, I actually am wearing pink because it's Wednesday and I'm going to go vote with one of my best friends. And so we are intentional of saying that, girl, let's go vote together because we live in the same county and we're going to do early vote. So I think it's important for folks to get that, make it fun. It doesn't need to be hard. It could just be super easy and have an activity around it. So we're going to go vote and then we're going to go get some Cheesecake Factory. Like it's a cute little moment for us and it'll be on my Instagram. So if you're following me already, get prepared for the content. But I think making things have life and fun and making it a moment is how we should talk, because we love to dress up. We love to be with family. We love to be with friends. We are a social community. And so when we make things that it's easier for us to utilize, I think that helps reduce some of these barriers that exist.
I love that, Genny. I'm always like a last minute voter and I'll lose my ballot and I'm like, oh, darn, I have to go to the polls now. And it's so anxiety provoking, but I have not missed a vote. I'm really proud to say that. But you've just inspired me to become an early voter and not procrastinate.
Success! Yes! And that's what I'm saying. All the folks on the line make a plan to vote early, and we can really get some people excited around this.
I was going to also share with you all that October 29th is Vote Early Day. So that's where a lot of organizations are going to do mass mobilization to vote early, because as Genny mentioned, it's so important. This cannot be left to the last minute. Election day is the last day to vote, not the first day. And a lot of the states already have opened early voting, and it's more fun. You can go on the weekend, you can choose a location. You're not stuck on one precise polling locations. Rules vary state by state, of course, of when they open and when they close. So check your Office of Elections. But also there's a lot of parties, like Genny mentioned. We're going to have events in all of our states. In Arizona, we're very excited that we're going to have a cabalgata, a horse parade a las urnas. So if you're in Arizona and Phoenix, join us at Rancho Ochoa on October 29th. And we'll also have cruising to the polls on National Latina Civic Engagement Day. We're going to be partnering with a women's car club, and we're going to be cruising in lowriders to the polls, culminating with a concert by Carla Morrison. So we're very excited. Please join us. Voting is fun. It's a celebration. Let's do it with music, with friends, and bring everyone along.
I wanted to say something. I wanted to quickly answer a question. I see Sheila Salinas is asking about last day to register to vote, and that varies by state. So in some
Yeah.
states like California, you can register the same day. In Georgia, it's 30 days before election day. So that varies by state. So I'm sorry, we can give, like, I don't know what state you're in. So unlike Genny and Yadira, my recommendation is a boring one, which is participate in the American Community Survey and the census, because organizations like us need to have the right data to push counties and boards of elections for language access, mandatory language access. In Georgia, the only county that has it is Gwinnett, because basically threatened with a lawsuit. But we need to know how many Spanish speakers are in a particular county. And so if you all don't help us out, we cannot do the advocacy, the work, the lawsuits, right? All the tools in the toolbox are available for us, but we need y'all's help to get us the right data so that we can push for what is our right under federal law. We do have one county that was able, Clark County, that was able to voluntarily, for the first time, provide ballots in Spanish, only because they have strong advocates and they have the right data of the people that answered the census in the American Community Survey. So it's a small thing, but democracy is a table that relies on all of these legs, right? Voting rights, census, redistricting, independent journalism and all of that. So it's all interconnected. Please answer your American Community Survey. Thank you.
Gigi, that wasn't boring at all, but also, like, where can you answer
I also
the
like to party,
survey?
okay?
You could do a survey party, but like,
And do my census.
they can go online to answer the survey. Can they go online?
Yes, they can, if they get the American Community Survey, of course, yeah.
Hecho. See, we can make a party out of it. We can make a party out of anything. I want people to be very clear.
Right. That's right.
The only
well,
other
before
mention,
Alex?
if I could jump in super quick, is I'm not sure about other states, but in Arizona, check with your employer. Deliberately ask your employer, set up a vote plan. So make sure that you're telling your friends, your family, get informed on where your polling location is. It's more likely that a family member, a friend, or neighbor will actually participate if you create a whole plan. So that means, what time are you going to go? How are you going to get there? Who are you going to go with? If you're going to vote on election day. But also do check with your employer, because in Arizona, state employees, as well as other independent employers, they allow up to 3 to 4 hours of leave time for you to actually go vote. So go ask your boss, see if you can get time off, get cute, then go turn in your ballot, go vote, and then bring your friend, because you have some time off during the day, and go get some lunch or go get some Cheesecake Factory, like Jenny said.
Cheesecake Factory is the best. So many options. Oh my God, I can talk about cheesecake all day.
Thank you all so much for being part of this panel, and for your knowledge, your expertise, your wisdom, and the inspiration that you all have brought to today's call. I definitely am leaving inspired and motivated to get out the vote and to vote early. October 29th, vote early day. So I'll definitely be amplifying that through my social media channels and through our organization at Future Leaders. And so again, thank you all so very much for being here today. To everybody who stayed with us to the very end of this call, thank you for joining today's call. I'm sure you found it just as insightful and inspirational as I did. And so again, thank you all so much for joining, and we wish you a great rest of your day and week. And here we go. November 5th is right around the corner. So let's get out and vote. Si se puede.
Si se puede. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Bye, gracias.